Why does calling someone toxic online now pay better than most full-time jobs? Somewhere between a viral call-out thread and a sponsored apology video, moral outrage stopped being a reaction and quietly became a business model. Every week, a new digital judge rises from the algorithm, armed with screenshots, righteous language, and an audience eager to watch another public execution, preferably before dinner. They tell us it's about accountability, about justice, about making the internet a safer place. But notice how often these moral crusades come with merch links, Patreon tiers, and perfectly timed brand deals. Stay until the end, because once you see how cancel culture rewards outrage more than truth, it becomes impossible to unsee who's really profiting from the chaos. At first glance, the stage looks familiar. A Twitter thread exploding overnight, a TikTok stitched 1,000 times, a YouTube thumbnail frozen mid-gasp, eyes wide mouth half open, the words exposed screaming in red capitals. The story always arrives wrapped in urgency, as if morality itself is on a deadline. Watch now, decide now, pick a side before the algorithm moves on without you. The central figure rarely calls themselves a creator. They prefer labels that sound heavier, nobler. Commentator, educator, advocate. Sometimes just someone holding people accountable. Their feeds are clean, carefully curated. Quotes about integrity. Screenshots of supportive DMs. A pinned post reminding everyone they don't enjoy doing this, followed by a 10-tweet breakdown of why they absolutely had to. The tone is calm, disappointed, parental, the voice of someone who wants you to know they're not angry, just deeply concerned for the moral health of the internet. Around them, the crowd assembles instantly. Retweets stack like applause. Comments read like a chorus rehearsed long ago. Thank you for speaking up. This needed to be said. We need more people like you. Each response reinforces the illusion that something righteous is happening, that a wrong is being corrected in real time. It feels communal, almost therapeutic, strangers united by the comforting belief that evil is obvious and virtue can be performed in public. Meanwhile, the visual language does most of the work. Timelines are reduced to cropped screenshots, stripped of context, highlighted like crime scene evidence. Old jokes resurface as proof of character. Likes become intent. Silence becomes guilt. The accused is flattened into a symbol, a cautionary tale, a villain for the weak. Complexity doesn't trend well, and nuance has terrible click-through rates. And then there's the media echo. Blogs rewrite the thread within hours. Reaction channels line up, each promising a calm, balanced take while monetizing the outrage all the same. Podcasts schedule emergency episodes. Even brands hover quietly, watching engagement spike, deciding whether this moment is on the right side of history enough to justify a partnership. The spectacle feeds itself a perfectly oiled outrage machine, pretending to be a moral awakening. But every so often, a crack appears in the polished surface. A donation link slips into the bio. A live stream is scheduled to process everything together. A reminder that this work is emotionally exhausting, followed by a gentle nudge toward Patreon, because holding people accountable apparently doesn't pay rent on its own. The language stays soft, the aesthetic stays virtuous, yet something about the timing feels rehearsed. Because while the audience is busy deciding who deserves to be punished, someone else is quietly counting views. And that's where the story stops being about justice and starts getting interesting. Over time, the figure at the center of these storms begins to look less like a random user and more like an institution. Their audience learns the rhythm of their appearances, the cadence of their disappointment, the familiar structure of each new expose. First, a solemn introduction, then the evidence carefully framed. Finally, the verdict delivered not with anger, but with the weary authority of someone who has done this far too many times before. The mythology builds itself through repetition. They are portrayed as reluctant heroes dragged into controversy against their will. I didn't want to make this video, they say moments before making it 20 minutes long. But people deserve to know. The phrasing is always passive, as if the algorithm itself reached out and begged them to upload. Responsibility dissolves into destiny. If harm was done, they were merely the messenger. Quotes begin to circulate detached from their original context and polished into moral slogans. Silence is violence. Accountability feels like oppression to the privileged. If you're uncomfortable, that means it's working. These lines travel faster than any evidence shared across platforms like commandments. To question them is to reveal yourself as suspect. To hesitate is to side with the accused. Brands notice. Invitations follow. Panels, podcasts, speaking gigs framed around digital ethics and online responsibility. The call-out artist is no longer just reacting to culture. They are shaping it, selling themselves as proof that the internet can police itself if given the right leaders. Their past threads are reframed as early activism. Their most viral moments become origin stories retold until criticism feels almost sacrilegious. The audience plays a crucial role in maintaining the legend. Supporters learn to anticipate attacks and defend preemptively. Any pushback is labeled harassment. Any attempt at nuance is dismissed as tone policing. A protective shell forms around the persona thickened by shared language and inside jokes. The creator is no longer just a person. They're a symbol of doing the right thing, and symbols don't apologize. Even contradictions are absorbed into the myth. When mistakes surface, they are reframed as growth arcs. A tearful apology video appears filmed in softer lighting, humility carefully arranged. The comments section fills with praise for vulnerability. The lesson is clear. Accountability is something you demand from others, then monetize when it finally turns toward you. And through it all, the metrics keep climbing. Subscriber counts rise. Engagement peaks. Each moral stand doubles as a career milestone. The narrative becomes self-sustaining. Outrage fuels relevance. Relevance fuels authority. Authority justifies more outrage. A closed loop disguised as progress. But legends have a weakness. They rely on selective memory. And the moment someone starts asking inconvenient questions not about the target, but about the judge, the entire structure begins to wobble. Because the story everyone knows has a second half they rarely talk about. And that's where the masks start to slip. This is usually the point where the timeline hesitates, not because the outrage has ended, but because it has begun to turn inward. Someone scrolls a little deeper, an old tweet resurfaces, a deleted video is archived, a former collaborator speaks up quietly at first, then louder when ignored. And suddenly, the person who built their platform on exposing others is standing under the same unforgiving light. The contradictions are rarely dramatic at first. They arrive as footnotes. A joke made years ago that now violates the very standards they enforce. A private message leaked showing a tone far less compassionate than their public persona. A moment where accountability looks suspiciously like personal vendetta. The dates matter here. The timelines matter, because what's being revealed isn't just hypocrisy, it's pattern. In several high-profile cases over the past few years, creators who made their names through call-outs were later accused of harassment themselves. Not metaphorical harm, direct messages, threats framed as pressure, coordinated dogpiles disguised as community action. Screenshots circulate showing how easily the language of justice can be repurposed into something uglier when it happens behind closed doors. And then there's the money. Revenue dashboards don't lie even when people do. Analytics spike precisely when scandals peak. Donation goals are met mid-drama. Live streams titled "Let's Talk" quietly break personal records. In some cases, creators openly admit they can't afford to stop covering controversies, not because the issues are unresolved, but because their audience expects blood. The algorithm doesn't reward restraint, it punishes silence. The most uncomfortable detail often goes unnoticed. Many of these figures continue to collaborate privately with people they publicly condemn. DMs stay friendly. Networking events remain polite. The outrage is for the audience, not the industry. Accountability becomes performative, something staged for views, while real consequences are carefully avoided. Careers are ruined selectively, strategically, often punching down rather than up. And when the backlash finally reaches them, the script flips instantly. The moral authority dissolves into vulnerability. This is affecting my mental health. I'm being targeted. I never asked for this level of attention. The same crowd that once cheered the takedowns is now asked to respect boundaries. The irony hangs heavy, the rules change the moment the camera turns around. Here's the detail no one likes to dwell on. Cancel culture didn't corrupt these creators, it rewarded them. It taught them exactly how far to push, which words trigger applause, which emotions convert best. It trained them to confuse being loud with being right and being followed with being moral. But this story isn't just about individual bad actors, because if it were, the cycle would have ended by now. The real question is why this system keeps producing the same characters over and over again, each convinced they're different from the last. And to answer that, you have to zoom out. What we're watching isn't a series of personal failures. It's an ecosystem doing exactly what it was designed to do. Platforms claim neutrality, but their incentives are loud and clear. Anger travels faster than context. Moral certainty converts better than doubt, and public punishment packaged as progress keeps people scrolling far longer than quiet reflection ever could. Cancel culture thrives because it offers something deeply human: clarity in a chaotic world. A villain, a hero, a narrative with a beginning, a climax, and a satisfying downfall. In a media environment overwhelmed by complexity, economic anxiety, political fatigue, cultural fragmentation, this kind of storytelling feels comforting. You don't need to understand systems when you can blame individuals. You don't need reform when you can perform righteousness. But there's a cost to this simplicity. When every mistake is treated as a moral crime, growth becomes suspicious. Apologies are assumed to be manipulative. Silence is read as guilt. The result isn't accountability, it's fear. People learn to curate themselves more carefully, not behave better. They speak in safer language, hide messier thoughts, and outsource their moral judgment to whoever has the biggest platform that week. The audience isn't innocent either. We reward these spectacles with attention, shares, and validation. We say we want justice, but what we respond to is drama. We claim to care about harm, yet rarely stick around for repair. Watching someone fall is quick. Watching them change is boring. And boredom doesn't trend. This is how power quietly shifts, not to institutions but to personalities, not to laws but to vibes. A small group of highly visible voices gain the authority to decide what's acceptable, not through expertise or consistency, but through engagement metrics. They become unofficial regulators of culture, unaccountable, unchallenged, and incentivized to keep the outrage cycle alive. And maybe the most unsettling part is this: many of these creators genuinely believe in what they're doing. The system doesn't require bad intentions, it only needs people willing to confuse visibility with virtue. In that sense, cancel culture isn't a conspiracy, it's a mirror, one that reflects our appetite for punishment, our discomfort with ambiguity, and our willingness to trade understanding for the illusion of moral control. Which brings us to the final irony. A culture obsessed with calling out toxicity has built a structure that quietly produces more of it. Louder, smarter, better monetized. And once you see that pattern, the last question becomes unavoidable. In the end, cancel culture didn't teach us how to be better. It taught us how to look better while doing worse. It showed us that sounding moral is often easier and far more profitable than actually acting with integrity when no one is watching. The public executions continue not because they heal anything, but because they entertain us just enough to feel justified. The irony is almost poetic. A movement born from the desire to reduce harm has perfected the art of inflicting it at scale, then calling it progress. Accountability became content. Outrage became currency. And virtue, once something you practiced quietly, turned into something you perform loudly for strangers who will forget your name by next week. So the next time a timeline erupts, complete with screenshots, solemn threads, and a creator reminding you they don't enjoy doing this, it might be worth pausing. Not to defend the accused, not to excuse real harm, but to ask a harder question: who benefits from this moment, and why does it feel so carefully staged? Because pretending to be virtuous is cheap. Being virtuous costs something. And in an economy built on clicks, only one of those is consistently rewarded. That's the real lesson hiding behind the outrage. Not that people are flawed, we already knew that, but that the internet has learned how to turn those flaws into a renewable resource. And like any industry built on extraction, it will keep digging until there's nothing left but noise.